This is really to introduce an initiative that my organization, Club Mondial, has been working with Sasamua, East African-based agribusiness, represented by Rory, for the past year to develop. And it's an initiative that they've really been leading based on a lot of the experiences that they have been faced with in East Africa. This is just some of the logos of some of the participants, and Soko Fresh is the Tanzanian entity of the business that we have established for East African farmers markets. But I'll also just let Rory jump in and introduce himself as well.
Hi everyone, Rory Nightingale. Yeah, very briefly, I originate from Kenya, born and grew up there, moved to Tanzania about 15 years ago to set up a slightly unrelated business, but moved back into agriculture, which is what our family's been doing for over a century, when we acquired a large block of land that we're developing into a primary production center in Tanzania. And our focus is on products for the local market, primarily fresh fruit and vegetables. And during the process of sort of developing out the large production center, we obviously did quite a lot of work in trying to understand the channel to market in the local regions. And as a result of that work, we realized that there was a substantial gap that needed to be filled in order to allow all producers, whether they're large producers like ourselves or small producers, to allow them a fair access to the wholesale market for fresh produce. And it's as I say, it's as a result of that work that this initiative was sort of born 2.5 years ago. And hopefully by the end of the presentation, I hope that you'll all agree that it's an initiative that will have a massive impact on primary producers, large and small, across the region, in the fruit and veg arena particularly. Back to you, Tanja.
Okay, this is just a quick pop quiz to sort of highlight some of the numbers which underpin why we're interested in this. So I don't know if anyone has any takers for Africa's fastest growing major city. But in case you don't, it's actually Dar es Salaam. In East African countries, 5 to 8% of local farmers supply at least 80% of local fresh produce. This means, in fact, that the markets are dominated by only very few farmers. And based on Rory's experience with the farm in Tanzania, about 20 to 40% of fresh produce is discarded through post-harvest losses. And the average markup on a box of tomatoes from farm gate is about 200%. Now, for all the economists among you, the average income elasticity of demand refers to how much demand changes as incomes increase. And in most sub-Saharan African countries, this is between 0.6 and 0.8%. 0.6 to 0.8, which means that there's an almost linear increase of demand as incomes grow. So obviously we think that this implies quite strong fundamentals to trying to do something around fresh produce production and marketing in the region.
One of the biggest challenges that we found in terms of trying to get into the local market with fruit and veg was this lack of transparency between the producers and the wholesale brokers at the large urban market. A huge amount of effort over the years has been put onto what we call the back end of the business, which is basically the farmer end. So there's been tremendous amount of money thrown at extension services, at providing new seed technologies, reducing costs of inputs, etc. But unfortunately, all that effort is ultimately goes to waste if you don't address the front end of the business, which is how do you create a fair market for the producers. And we believe very firmly that the average farmer in this part of the world, and by average farmer I'm referring again to the small farmers, we believe that their capability is grossly underestimated, and that in fact if you give them an opportunity with a market, they will in fact find their own way to improve the way that they farm and produce. So again, the emphasis we feel needs to be moved more to the front end of the business, which is looking at the market. I think as one of those points mentions there, there's little point in producing any more and or of better quality if you can't monetize it. And this is the problem that all farmers face at the moment, is that as much as you can produce, you're not getting any increment in value because of this rather disjointed channel to market that exists at the moment, where you effectively have price being controlled by unrelated parties. In the case of the urban markets, it's the large brokers that handle the various commodities. There's been a huge amount of sort of discussion about how one can improve those markets, and there are many studies and many examples of where attempts have been made to try and intervene at market level. But quite frankly, with the structures that we have in terms of government and governance in this part of the world, it's unlikely that in our lifetime they're going to be able to coordinate a satisfactory solution to it. So we believe the private sector needs to step in, and the objective that we're looking at trying to achieve is to create this parallel market that won't replace the existing systems. I don't think you can ever replace them, and they serve a purpose, but it does provide an opportunity for all producers to be able to decide which channel they want to pursue, and if they are interested in increasing volume and improving quality, then the market that we're proposing allows them to do exactly that. Very quickly, this is an example of a typical tomato scenario. In this case, it happens to be from the Southern Highlands in Tanzania. The data is actually slightly out of date because this was a survey that we conducted a couple of years ago, but the numbers have only gone up as opposed to down. And I'm sure it's the same in both Kenya and Uganda. The challenges are exactly the same, where you have this very disjointed channel to market, and as a result, no feedback in terms of pricing from the end user back to the producer, or in terms of quality. And as Tanja mentioned earlier, a typical transaction will result in a sort of a 200% increase in the cost of a commodity like tomatoes, but the bulk of that value increment is gained at the broker level. It's not gained by the farmer, and this is something that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, farmers have no incentive to produce. Back to you, Tanja.
Okay, thanks. So the whole vision of this initiative was then to transform the region's producers from price takers to price makers. And looking at some of the existing examples, I mean, as you can see from the image, and as I'm sure that many of you have also experienced firsthand, many of these markets tend to have a lack of organization, little access to storage, including cold storage, poor hygiene, no quality control or quality assurance for local buyers, and no price volume transparency for local sellers, and also no price predictability or tracking ability for producers, and also a high degree of wastage and inefficiency. And the other image that you can see alongside it is from a market in Johannesburg, and this is effectively the system that we want to try to bring up to East Africa. It's a system that has been in place in South Africa since the 1860s and is functioning quite well, and tackles a lot of these issues that you can see that are present on the existing market systems. So enabling better transparent trading processes and putting the more of the money back into the pockets of producers and giving them more ability to have a say over how their produce is sold, rather than being captured by intermediaries. This is an overview of the concept. So it's basically relying on a commission agent system, which is the main thing that separates it from the existing market systems that are in place in East Africa. So commission agents are essentially brokers, but brokers that are answerable to the producers and not operating on their own behalf. So the key difference is that the producers maintain ownership and transparency until sale, And the commission agents, the brokers, are working on behalf of those producers and are answerable to them. So the first step is the producer contacts the commission agent, and then produce gets collected at a collection point. And obviously having some sort of economies of scale around collection and transport allows different producers to group together and to access market together, which also influences transport. At the market, so this initiative has both sort of soft infrastructure, which is more on the IT and management systems approach, as well as more hard or traditional infrastructure. So there will be a market hall where produce will arrive and then be logged into an IT system where it can then be seen by the producers, and also comparative data seen in terms of pricing and volumes sold on that day, to make sure that there is also some sort of accountability for the commission agents. The other thing that will be built will be a temperature-controlled storage unit. So that will allow producers and their brokers to be able to store produce to wait for better prices if need be. And also it operates like the South African system on a cashless payment system, but builds it out to also benefit from some of the mobile payment systems that have become so popular in East Africa. And there's also, as we move forward, I'll show you that there's also some sort of internal insurance program to try to stem any losses. I don't know, Rory, if you want to add anything to this.
Again, just sort of emphasizing that the market itself, there's a couple of fundamental differences between the way these markets are run to the existing system. The first difference is that they are extremely regulated. They're highly formal, very regulated. They're run by a market manager and his team, whose mandate it is to ensure that all the rules of the market are maintained. Supporting him and his team is the IT system that Tanja mentioned. It's a software called Freshmark IT, which currently runs on about I think it's 23 out of the 27 markets in South Africa, as well as a few in Namibia and Botswana. But basically, that software is the control engine of the market itself. It captures all the data for the transaction electronically, which is then made available to the general public either through internet or SMS-based technology, to give all stakeholders in the industry a very clear view of exactly what's going on in the markets. The other element of this software is that it'll allow us to replicate markets across the region and to link them all through the IT system, which will then give producers, as an example, it'll give producers the opportunity to determine where and when they want to sell their product. I mean, for instance, a producer in Uganda may decide that he doesn't want to sell his potatoes in Kampala because he can get a better price for them in Dar es Salaam, based on the information that he's able to get through the IT platform. So, as I say, fundamentally a big step change from what we have currently, both in terms of regulatory controls and also in terms of information sharing.
Okay, so just in terms of the components, as Rory mentioned, what we want to have is basically a number of different markets connected throughout the region. So that's really the end game. Starting with a local pilot market in Dar es Salaam, and there will be sort of layers of market management as well as overarching connecting management structure. So for each market, there is a market authority which is in charge of managing that specific market. There is hard infrastructure controlled by it, and management of some of the ancillary services such as processing and packaging, as well as the localized IT system, which is then connected to other markets across the country, and which fits with some of the national guidance, for example, on packaging and grading, and that is connected then across to other parts of East Africa. And we also think that this will be very exciting in terms of trying to leverage some of the legislative changes for better integration across the East African community. And so there will be an integrated IT system, as Rory mentioned, and also better aligned standards in terms of market governance and training for different human resources within the market infrastructure, both commission agent brokers as well as people actually working under the market authority. And a lot of the sort of existing good practice guidance we're actually bringing up from South Africa through a partnership with the Institute of Market Agents, which have also agreed to come up and share their guidance materials and training materials, and also produce grading standards. So I referenced a little bit in terms of participants, and we already have quite a few groups that are committed to participating in this venture. So we have buy-in from the Tanzanian Horticultural Association, TAHA, which gives us a strong network to a number of farmers and cooperatives across Tanzania. We also have commitment from a number of larger primary producer companies in Tanzania and also in Kenya, and an existing commission agent who wants to transfer their business to Tanzania. And as we said, we have established Soko Fresh, which is the Tanzanian-based entity who will manage this. But we also see that there's clearly opportunities for other businesses to participate in this venture. So other commission agents, other service providers. I should also note that we're bringing up the IT system from South Africa, as Rory also mentioned. And we've already been approached with interest from companies that want to provide cooling and use the market to distribute different types of inputs, and also as a source of bulk buying, both for regional transportation and also for exports. In terms of the impacts, we expect that this initiative has a very significant potential for generating positive impact, both within Dar es Salaam as well as in rural areas in Tanzania and the rest of the region. So obviously, we expect that this will create jobs, both directly in terms of working for the market authority, the commission brokers, and also in rural areas in terms of stimulating local demand for agricultural produce, in particular higher quality and sort of produce more targeted towards the demands of local consumers. We expect there to be quite a number of indirect job impacts, in particular in terms of processing and training and marketing and branding, as well as extension, which we've already been approached with some interest in. We think that this will also encourage resource use efficiency, so encouraging farmers to produce more with fewer resources. It'll improve traceability, reduce wastage, and also provide greater access to nutritional food amongst the growing urban populations in this region. I won't read all of them because that would be quite boring, but I don't know, Rory, if you also want to mention something here.
Again, just going back to the indirect job creation, I mean, obviously, a market or a network of markets of this sort of scale will create some wonderful opportunities for some SMEs to develop. I mean, transport and logistics would be a very obvious one. The market is obviously going to be designed around produce arriving at appropriate temperature-controlled conditions, which means that they need to originate from source in those conditions. So, for instance, with Taha, they already have a division, which is a logistics department that runs a number of coal trucks. They're looking to expand that fleet as much as possible, but their restriction at the moment is not so much the production side, it's where they take it to. So this creates a great opportunity for demand just on the cold chain logistics side. Aggregation centers, we know there are a number of organizations that would love to be able to put some money into developing aggregation centers, but are challenged currently by what do they do with the product that they aggregate. Again, with a much more transparent channel to market, particularly the wholesale market, this suddenly creates an opportunity for delivery out of those aggregation centers. So I think, there's a tremendous number of spin-off businesses that will benefit, that will develop out of this particular network.
This is just to give you an overview of the business plan. We won't go into this in a lot of detail, but and those of you who want to discuss it in more detail, we can organize something bilaterally to go through it. But it is something that we have been working on for over a year now, and we feel that we have quite a solid start for doing the pilot in Dar es Salaam. And this is just to give you some images of the existing commission market in Joburg, which, as Rory mentioned, there are a lot, pretty much every major city in South Africa has a similar market, and also some in the surrounding countries. And we have been down there and formed partnerships with some of the major organizations, both on the business side and also on the not-for-profit side, who are involved in those market systems. And we've also identified an individual who has run several of these markets, who would come up and run the pilot market in Dar es Salaam. So as you can see, there's a sort of cashless system being managed, and produce is quite clearly marked, and there is a very strongly organized system in terms of arrival and sorting and management of the produce, which results in much greater efficiency. And alongside that, there is cold store rental facilities, which provide an extra income source. Just to give you a sense of how the governance would work, so this is on a national level, and as we said earlier, there is connection to other markets, or intends to be connection to other markets in the country and also in the region. There's a management board which has overall supervision and approves and oversees the markets and coordinates. And then there's a manager who is appointed by the management board, who really has sort of day-to-day supervision, and in particular is responsible for supervising the commission agents to make sure that they are operating appropriately and in accordance with the guidance and the market bylaws. There's a training and standards body, and this is where we want to leverage off the South African expertise, and also an IT platform, which, as Rory mentioned, we have an agreement already with Freshmark, which is the South African provider of this technology in most of the South African markets. And they've committed to contributing their technology and their expertise in terms of setting this up and helping to supervise it.
Two points I'd like to comment. One is obviously at the management board level. Just expanding on what Tanja was saying, there will in fact be two elements to that. There'll be the board of directors, whose responsibility it is to look at the commercial aspects of the market itself and make sure that the market is commercially viable, and that the sort of expansion plans are in line. And then there will be another board, which we haven't decided on the name of the board, but effectively it'll be a board that will be made up of stakeholders from the industry. Now, their role will be to agree and develop some of the standards that operate within the market, obviously with guidance and support from the board of directors themselves. But principally, they're there to ensure that the market is benefiting all the stakeholders equally. At the other end of the drawing is obviously the commission agents, and again, I just wanted to sort of emphasize there that the commission agents are a very regulated group of agencies. They need to go through a very strict certification program. They have to be formally trained and approved, and they also need to demonstrate some sort of financial capability, because they will be required to lodge some funds with some form of fiduciary account that will be there to basically protect the producers from any inappropriate dealings at commission agent level. So, as I mentioned earlier, a very regulated, very controlled environment, which is diametrically opposite to what we have currently.
Commission agents will effectively be a number of different companies, so they'll be in competition also to provide services to the producers. So in terms of the market money flows, we intend that this should be a commercially viable business, and the market itself will make money through a number of different ways. So both in terms of taking a commission on produce flowing through the market, but also probably some money from rental of cold storage, and perhaps also other services provided to the market. So in addition to the market authority accounts, there is also the commission agent's trust account, which essentially lodges all the funds from commission agents, and the commission agent's security trust in particular is a sort of levy on the monies earned by the commission agents, and it acts as a form of internal security towards the producers. So it's a form of sort of self-insuring that the producers are, if something goes wrong, that they can in some way be compensated.
I think the main point, obviously, is that this whole process is electronic. I think that's the key thing to understand, is that there is no cash in the system. And the advantage of that is that the distribution of funds is quick, it's accurate, and obviously leaves some form of paper trail that can be reviewed post the event if there's any need to do so. But I think the sort of primary point of that is that the producers will be in a position to receive their funds. We would typically expect them to be paid within 48 hours of their product being sold. And likewise, obviously, commission agents will also receive their funding. So it's a great way of ensuring that the cash flow gets back to where it needs to ensure that the system is continuous.
And in terms of where we are at this moment, so as you probably have gathered, we're setting up a pilot project in Dar es Salaam, which we hope to kick off this year. And in the first year, we expect to have a trading floor, which will be trading mostly sort of vegetables and fresh fruits. And we expect to grow that up to about 20 tons per square meter per year in the first year, and then in next year to also expand to other horticultural products, and also preferably to beef and to livestock products, and to double the trading volume. We expect that the pilot commercial will be cash flow positive in the third year, and that trading will continue to significantly increase. And we also expect around end of year 2, year 3 to be also looking at other markets. Just to give you a sense of the scale, Johannesburg market trades over $373 million per year and over 1.2 million tons, and just the population size is around 3.2 million.
Obviously we're benchmarking ourselves against the South African model because it's about as close as we can get to other Africa. Obviously, South Africa does have some advantages in the sense that it's had a formal market system for well over a century. But if we look at the statistics of volumes of product produced and consumed, and excluding the export business that they do, which is substantial, we estimate that for a population that is not vastly different to that of Tanzania, for example, the production is probably a factor of 10 or more times what the Tanzanian production market is currently producing. And that's driven primarily by two factors. One is obviously the purchasing power of the average populace in South Africa, which we accept is generally higher, but Tanzania's urban population is developing into middle class very quickly. The other factor is that they have such an efficient channel to market, and therefore there's substantially less produce that's discarded as a result of post-harvest losses. So those two factors, we believe that even if we can achieve a percentage of what South Africa is doing now, it'll already be a substantial improvement on what we have currently.
So this is just to give you a sense of how we intend to roll things out. So there is quite a clear plan in place. This is also the stage that we're at in terms of looking at the different aspects and securing them for the DAR pilot commercial. We have gotten some of the funding that's needed for this initiative, but we're still looking for some additional funding to support it. In terms of the resource needs, this is generally what we're looking for the initial pilot in Dar es Salaam. We and also the African Enterprise Challenge Fund have put some resources towards it. But as we move forward, we are looking for additional support, both in terms on the cash and the resourcing side, to really get to the next level. And that includes also any sort of technical expertise. So we'd be very grateful for any sort of thoughts or suggestions, in particular on this side, as we look towards the next steps in building the pilot commercial.
Obviously, we've done a fairly substantial amount of work in terms of leveraging some funding, some early stage funding. The grant and concessional loan that we've got from ACF is as a result of nearly a year's worth of work, and we're delighted that they've elected to get on board. I think we broke the rules as far as ACF is concerned on a number of fronts. We're a greenfields project, which they typically wouldn't consider, and so we're obviously very pleased that they've recognised the value of the initiative. This is typically a project or a market that would be built by municipal and government funds, but that's clearly not going to happen in our part of the world in the short term. So hence the reason why we're looking as much as possible to try and see if we can get some grant and concessional funding for the pilot commercial project, so that we can prove the concept before we go out and start to develop the much larger and obviously much more capital intensive national markets. Thanks. Probably what we need to do is to define a market agent a little bit more carefully. Basically, a market agent is actually an agency. So in other words, it's a corporate entity that has the rights to trade on the market floor. Now, obviously, within the agency, they will have a number of people that work for them that are on the floor, who are effectively the agents themselves. But the idea is to try and establish market agencies that would have the capacity to have an office in as many of the markets as possible, so that they can communicate effectively amongst each other and determine where the best potential is for their clients' produce. In terms of the relationship with the farmers, they would engage on an annual basis into a contractual arrangement to represent a various number of farmers, possibly for their entire produce, maybe just for one particular product line. But effectively, you'd end up with a situation where you've got a number of agencies all competing to sell the product on behalf of the producers. And obviously, the producers that are generating better quality product, or perhaps larger volumes of product, or maybe better, more consistent product, will be the ones that they're all vying for. But the idea is really to try and create a little bit of competition amongst a number of agencies, so that at the end of the day, the producer is the one that is ultimately benefiting from the competition between the agents.
Yeah, the system in South Africa, which we're looking at least initially, and then probably modifying, where agents, as Rory said, are competing for the ability to sell products, and some of them specialize in, for example, tomatoes, or in a specific region. And if they were to be able to specialize in a specific region, then maybe they can also get some economies of scale in terms of organizing transport or helping their farmers in other ways. And also definitely very much that they should be regional or have a regional focus.
Typically, Alex, what happens in these situations is that the contract will require exclusivity, at least for a product. So, for instance, we as banana producers down here, we would only expect to enter into an agreement with one market agent to handle our banana range. But we may well enter into a contract with somebody else to handle our pineapples, for example.
I'm also wondering, Rory and Tanja, where do you see the role of governments, of local governments in this kind of initiative, or what kind of support would you expect to have from local governments?
This is actually the domain of local government, and anywhere else in the world, this market would be provided by the local government themselves, and they would obviously have an element of say over the way it's run. What we've found here typically is that there's a little bit too much politics involved, and quite often a number of private individual agendas, which tend to result in these sorts of projects never actually getting off the ground, which is why we as the private sector have said, okay, well, we'll need to intervene. Now, obviously, we realize that we have to have some sort of interaction with local government. It's not going to be possible to operate completely autonomously. But what we've elected to do is to engage groups like TAHA, in the case of Tanzania, the Horticultural Association, who are effectively a quasi-government organization, and they will act as our go-between between us as the private sector and the government, both at national and local level. So they obviously have our interests at heart, because their primary objective is to the upliftment of their own farmer groups.
Obviously, the government needs to set the standards and the rules and regulations around what's possible. So if it's even possible to operate a private market, which it is, and also sets the general economic sort of landscape for doing this kind of work in terms of standards, of fresh produce, and also trade regulations with other countries, both within the region and also to exports, and things like phytosanitary standards and health and safety. And we have also had some discussions with some of the local government officials, like mayors and things in Dar es Salaam, and there is a huge interest in having this kind of market be present in their constituencies, because they see that it's sort of can be beneficial. So I do think that sort of goodwill of local government is important, but we don't want to be dragged, as Rory said, too much into making this too political.
Are you at the stage where you could actually, people can engage, and what would be the way to move that forward?
Certainly, in terms of engaging, we're very keen to start dialogue with any organisations that are helping to aggregate or consolidate farmers' activities, because clearly one of the key requirements of the market as it gets established is going to be throughput, because that's how the market survives. So we're very keen now to start at least entering into early stage discussions with organizations such as yourselves that will be able to utilize the market to help develop their own trading groups. A bit of an aside, but one of the sort of longer term ambitions is, I think you saw in one of the slides, is to expand outward in terms of product range. Obviously, primary focus is going to be fruit and veg, because it requires some very specific interventions. But we would like to think that we may be able to then take this another step forward and possibly look at some sort of commodity trading floor that would allow some of the, let's say, some of the cereal crops, for instance, to be traded much more transparently than they are currently. But in terms of going back to your original question, are we ready to engage? The answer is probably yes. We're not ready to trade, but we're certainly ready to start dialogue with organisations like yourself to see how we can get you guys on board.
Probably strengthens both organizations. I mean, if we can show that there are people that are interested to send produce through the markets, that's a benefit to us, and hopefully it can also be a benefit to you to have another point through which to sell through.